In the world of rock, few figures have been as loud, outrageous, and brutally honest as Johnny Rotten, the snarling voice of rebellion who helped tear down the music establishment in the late 1970s. At 69, the man once known as punk's ultimate troublemaker has finally let his guard down, revealing the 5 rock albums that shaped his chaotic, fearless journey through music. The man who screamed anarchy in the UK is now looking back with raw honesty, paying respect to the records that made him who he is. But don't expect polite nostalgia. This is Johnny Rotten, and his list is anything but ordinary. Let's uncover the albums that still make the legend's blood boil, his heart race, and his mind explode with memories. Number 1, Raw Power by the Stooges, 1973. For Johnny Rotten, this wasn't just an album, it was a revolution. When Iggy Pop and the Stooges released Raw Power, they weren't chasing radio hits or record label approvals. They were building an atomic bomb out of pure noise, attitude, and danger. Johnny has often said that Raw Power was the album that showed him music didn't need to be pretty. It needed to be real. He once described hearing Iggy's voice as a punch in the throat, and the guitars, like a train wreck you couldn't stop watching. Songs like Search and Destroy and Gimme Danger became his personal soundtrack in the early 1970s, London chaos. The energy, the filth, the defiance, it was everything he would later bring to the Sex Pistols. Johnny credits Iggy Pop as one of the few frontmen who could match his raw honesty. For him, Raw Power wasn't an influence. It was a warning, a signal that music could be messy, violent, and still beautiful in its destruction. Number 2, The Velvet Underground and Nico by The Velvet Underground, 1967. When Rotten first heard The Velvet Underground, it was like discovering a secret weapon. Most of the world ignored Lou Reed's strange, droning masterpiece in the late 60s, but Johnny understood it immediately. The songs weren't about fantasy, they were about reality, addiction, isolation, obsession, and life on the edge. He once said, "That album told me it was okay to be strange. It gave me permission to be honest." The sound of Venus in Furs, the drone of heroin, the eerie calm of Sunday morning, all of it created a mood that matched the chaos inside him. The Velvet Underground didn't try to please anyone, and that defiance spoke directly to Rotten's soul when he was forming the Sex Pistols. He often pointed out that the Velvet Underground and Nico wasn't about virtuosity. It was about truth. And truth, no matter how ugly, was the foundation of punk rock. Number 3, Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols, 1977. Of course, no list from Johnny Rotten could exist without the very album that changed everything, Never Mind the Bollocks. The irony is that Rotten both loves and hates this record. He's proud of its power, but disgusted by the industry circus it created. When he looks back now, he says it was the most honest record ever made by accident. Songs like God Save the Queen, Pretty Vacant, and Anarchy in the UK weren't written to start a movement. They were written out of frustration. And yet they gave a generation a voice. Rotten admits that even he didn't realize what he was unleashing at the time. It wasn't about punk, he said. It was about truth, and the truth was ugly. Never Mind the Bollocks remains one of the most dangerous and defiant albums in history. And for Johnny, it stands as both a triumph and a curse, a monument to rebellion that still refuses to die. Number 4, The Doors by The Doors, 1967. Before punk existed, there was Jim Morrison, and for Johnny Rotten, Morrison was one of the few rock stars who didn't pretend. He didn't dress up rebellion, he lived it. Rotten has often said that The Doors' debut album was like a diary of a man losing his mind beautifully. Songs like Break On Through, Soul Kitchen, and The End showed him that rock music could be poetic and still brutal. He admired Morrison's courage to challenge the audience, to make people uncomfortable, to refuse to be liked. Rotten saw in him a kindred spirit, another artist who didn't care if the world understood him, as long as the message was true. He once joked that if Jim Morrison had been alive in 1977, he would have joined the Sex Pistols, because he hated everything too. For Rotten, The Doors opened a door of its own, one that led straight into the madness and beauty of total artistic freedom. Number 5, Electric Warrior by T-Rex, 1971. Now, here's the surprise on Rotten's list. Electric Warrior by T-Rex. Many fans wouldn't expect the punk icon to admire glam rock, but for Johnny, Mark Bolan's swagger and wit were irresistible. He had charm, Rotten once said, and he didn't fake it. Electric Warrior was full of groove, attitude, and style, but beneath the glitter there was genuine passion. Songs like Get It On and Jeepster reminded Rotten that rebellion could also be fun. It didn't always have to scream. Sometimes it could smile. Rotten grew up watching Bolan on TV and respected how he turned pop music into something strange and unpredictable. To him, Mark Bolan wasn't a poser. He was a pioneer who taught rock how to dance without losing its edge. Today, at 69, Johnny Rotten might not spit venom on stage the way he once did, but that rebellious fire still burns. When he talks about these 5 albums, it's clear that what he values most is honesty, the courage to say what others won't. Whether it's Iggy Pop's Chaos, Lou Reed's Poetry, Jim Morrison's Darkness, or Mark Bolan's Glitter, all of them represent different sides of the same truth. Music that dares to be real. In the end, Johnny Rotten's favorite albums aren't about perfection. They're about freedom. The freedom to shout, to question, to break the rules, and to never apologize for being who you are. And even now, decades later, he still lives by that code. Because for Johnny Rotten, music was never about fame. It was about truth. And truth, as he's proven again and again, never goes out of style.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.